I thought it would be a good idea to do a little personal testimony and then tie it into an update from what's going on here in Flagstaff. So I want to start out with this. You can kind of pick up from my bio that you read there. It said my life journey began in North Dakota, Grand Forks, North Dakota specifically. And that's where I was born and raised. And my parents raised me in a religious home where we attended church regularly, and I was enrolled in the local church school. And as I went through school, I became an altar boy, and I counted today as a blessing that I never had to really wrestle with the idea of whether or not there was a God or the existence of God. So I really thank my parents and family for that. But when I was about 13 or 14 years old or so, and I was going through the confirmation process at my local church there, I rode my bike over to the church one Saturday afternoon for a confessional session with our local priest. During that session, I was confessing my sins and so forth, and then he said to me, he said, "Are you praying?" And I thought, wow, I'd never even thought of that concept. It kind of caught me off guard, and it never dawned on me that maybe I could be praying at home rather than just in a church. And so that evening, that night, I went to bed. I didn't really know what I was doing. I began just talking to God and praying and talking about the day and things like this. And this started me on a spiritual pursuit to try to satisfy. There was a longing in my heart developing. And I thought, well, maybe this prayer thing is going to do something. Well, went through high school and graduated, and I went right into college. And while I was in my first year of college there in Grand Forks, I had some friends that were LDS, and they invited me to be involved in a Bible study. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. This is kind of going along with some spiritual development. So I began studying, and the local elders at the Mormon church there give me scriptures and things like that. And my friends were involved and things like that. So I started studying the Bible for the first time since confirmation class that I did 5 to 6 years prior. Well, through this Bible study process, I began to really sense a longing to follow Christ. And so I committed my life to Christ and really was having a personal spiritual revival and commitment to Christ. And I was reading the Bible for myself rather than in a class, and really growing spiritually. And subsequently, though, naively, I was baptized into the LDS church, and much to the chagrin of my family, who was really concerned about me. And at the same time, I decided I transferred universities and moved to Fargo, North Dakota, to North Dakota State University, and declared nutrition and dietetics as my major. And I just started a new life. I had this new faith. I joined this church because I thought, I had this spiritual experience studying with these LDS folks. And so I joined the church. But I was going through college there and getting my dietetics degree and studying nutrition and wanted to do wellness and sports performance. And I was reading the student paper one afternoon, and at the back of the student paper at the university there at North Dakota State, I saw an advertisement for a film that was going to be shown on the campus called The God Makers. And the caption under it caught my attention. It says, "Find out the truth about Mormonism." And I thought, well, I really don't know that much about Mormonism and the church that I belong to. So I went to that meeting, went into that, and I came out of that meeting. And the interesting thing is that film is not produced by the LDS Church. It's actually produced by Campus Crusade and the Jeremiah Film Project. And I came out of that film scared to death. And I thought to myself, what did I get myself into? Because it starts laying scriptural foundation, which I was very naive as far as scripture goes. Yeah, I was developing a relationship with Christ, and I was studying the Bible for myself, but I kind of went underground, so to speak. And I began praying in my closet, and I was kind of really spooked out by, was I being deceived? So I furiously was reading the Bible, but didn't really have much direction and structure to my Bible study. And I was wondering what I got myself into. I even went back and visited the church of my youth, and then I decided, no, I don't think that's for me. And I just stayed away from organized religion. Well, I started working at a health club because I was trying to work in a field that was supportive of the major I was studying with wellness and nutrition. And a coworker and I had lunch together one day, and my coworker said to me, "Well, what church do you belong to?" And I said, "Well, I'm really not belong to a church right now. I'm not really into organized religion. I'm kind of sorting things out." And my coworker says, "Well, how about you come to church with me this Saturday?" And I thought, that's interesting. I've never really heard of Saturday church before. And so I went with my coworker to church, and we were there, and I kept making arrangements with my work schedule and started going to church. And I thought, well, now I've got a spiritual community I'm with and things like that. And it's interesting. And I share this with as many people as I could find. So I'm attending the Fargo SDA church, and I was a college student, junior year of college. And one day when I was leaving the church, I looked over on the counter in the foyer area of the church, and I saw this stack of books there. And I said, I picked one up and I looked at it and I said, well, what are these? And the church member said, oh, those are our quarterlies. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. You have quarterlies in your church. And I'm like, what is a quarterly? And they said, oh, that's a Sabbath school quarterly. We have this Bible study before church each day, and we get together and we study. And I said, well, is that open to the public? Can I come to that? And they said, oh, absolutely. And they gave me my first quarterly. And I took that thing, and it suddenly gave me structure to my Bible study, and it got me into the scriptures with a organized way of studying, like a systematic way of studying. And I tell you, my faith began to grow, and it was so amazing. Small church in Fargo, North Dakota. And I would go to church, go to the Sabbath school and then to church. And it was so cool that I thought, this is so neat. These Adventist people actually study what they believe, and they openly discuss it. See, my previous experience was kind of like you had to kind of be led and put there, but they actually, and I remember these two gentlemen. One was a banker, one was a farmer, and they were best friends, and they had differing views on things at time, and they would sit and they'd discuss it in a very civilized manner. And I'd sit there like watching like a tennis match, like they'd say, well, what's he have to say? And I'd get into scriptures. But it really, the Sabbath school quarterly grounded me in my faith. It gave me a process of studying that really gave me direction. Well, I was attending the year, getting ready, attending the church for about 2 years, getting ready to graduate with my bachelor's degree. And the pastor asked me if I'd be open to doing some Bible studies. And so finally, I went through a series of Bible studies. Pretty much everybody in the church knew me at the time. They probably didn't realize I wasn't a member. And so when I went through the process of studying with the church and the pastor, I suddenly realized that I had embraced about 26 of the 27 at the time fundamental beliefs of the church. I had a sticking point with the gift of prophecy in the church, mainly because of my experience with the LDS church in their view on prophecy and the gift of prophecy. And so I kind of left that one on the shelf, and I embraced 26 of the 27 fundamental beliefs and was baptized. And like within a month, I graduated and moved down to Lincoln and Omaha, Nebraska, because I had to do a dietetics medical internship. And I was working at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha there. And so I started attending the Omaha Memorial SDA Church, brand new member and so forth, and getting involved there. So I decided to start going to prayer meeting, and I walked into prayer meeting, and I didn't know what we were studying, and I was new in town and so forth. And I looked, and everybody had a book in their hand, and they handed me a book, and we were just going around reading right out of this book. And then we'd read a couple paragraphs, and then we would discuss them. And man, this material about end times and how this whole biblical formation from creation to the new earth to the new earth, okay, was taking us through there. And I thought, what is the name of this book? And you know what they told me it was? The name of this book is The Great Controversy. And I thought, wow, this just opened up my mind. And I said, wow, this is so good. And the saints around there, they said to me, you've never read The Great Controversy? And I said, no. And they said, well, you don't have any of these books? And subsequently, isn't this interesting? Right there in Omaha, Pacific Press used to have a publishing press. And so several of those members in the church either had worked at Pacific Press or they had family members there. So suddenly the saints found out that I didn't have any of the books, okay? So every week at prayer meeting, when we're reading this Great Controversy chapter by chapter, my mind is just blown. But the bonus to this was that each member in that Sabbath school, in that prayer meeting would bring me a book from their home collection because they had mismatched sets and stuff. I have a 1915 edition of the book Education, which was the first book I read of Ellen White's cover to cover. So I suddenly I had a full library of the books of Ellen White on my shelf, and I just couldn't get enough. Well, I was going through that, and I suddenly realized that there was this thing called the health message. I'm a dietitian. I'm studying nutrition, but I didn't really realize what people would talk about this health message. And I suddenly realized the biblical health message that we've been gifted with, and I embraced that. And people pointed me to the idea of the Testimonies Volume 7, where it talks about hygienic restaurants, because they heard that I had a passion to open up a bakery. And it's interesting that Volume 7 and the testimonies about the health work and so forth became my business plan. And I began to pursue starting a vegetarian restaurant back in my hometown of Grand Forks, North Dakota. Well, through this process, the Lord brought me a business partner who eventually became my wife. So here we are, 28 years of marriage later, 2 restaurants. We've worked in 2 lifestyle centers, and now we're in our 3rd university teaching the health message to secular public school students. And it's more gratifying than I could ever imagine. So fast forward to just a few months ago, when we heard about this project, this great controversy in every home from Pastor Oleg, and that he was coming through Flagstaff, and that we were going to allow him to have the pulpit for Sabbath, we embraced this project immediately as a church. We wanted to give people in our region an opportunity to meet our Savior and to prepare to meet Jesus when he comes. So the great controversy, we believe, is the vehicle God has given us, is chosen for us for Flagstaff. And so just kind of give you an idea, that's a little bit how we got to hear that now the Flagstaff Church for about the last 5 years, we've been praying and studying and searching for a way to create an identity and involvement in our community. We're a university town with a lot of people moving in and out. And we've been seeking to form a strong base to operate the church from. And when a few of us heard and saw this project, we felt impressed that we need to be involved. And we are humbled by the fact that we're being supported in such a way as so many of you gathering each morning and supporting this project. And when we first took on this project, we were figuring it would take us about up to 2026 to actually get everything covered in our town. Maybe 5 to 6 years if we were strategizing. But with the partnership of Streams of Light and all this support we're receiving, we're seeking to cover this city in 4 days, which we feel is going to transform our church and the community. But recently, it's interesting how this project is beginning to transform our members in our local church. It has given us a laser focus for mission and purpose that we've been searching for. And I'm reading in the book of Acts. When we started this project, I started reading the book of Acts again. And it's interesting how similar to the early church found in the book of Acts, but the difference is we were not really jockeying for greatness like we see a lot of times with the disciples. They're jockeying, but this project is unifying our church. We have several members who never saw themselves going door to door in the community or doing a project in this magnitude. But we're uniting. We're truly becoming one accord. And I really believe that Acts 4:32 says, "Now the multitude of those who believed were of one heart and one soul. Neither did anyone say that any of the things he possessed was his own, but they had all things in common." This is the experience we're having as a church in Flagstaff. We're excited about what the Lord's going to do with this project. And we are now meeting weekly as an administrative team here with Streams of Light. And we're in the process of putting the details together, not only for the mission trip distribution of the books and all the details that go with that, but we're also going to have a follow-up seminar with Daniel Binus, a physician from California, a short prophecy seminar with Anthony Baca to follow that up with from Souls West. But we're also planning into the new year. This is giving our church a laser focus, like I said, giving us this unifying opportunity to come together. And we just feel blessed to be part of this initiative, to be a pilot and model project that could maybe be duplicated in other churches across the North American division and beyond. So thank you for supporting us, and thank you for the opportunity to share that with you. I thought I would give you a little update. But the crucial thing here is this is unifying our church in a time where this nation and our church seems to be running in several different directions. So that's a little update from Flagstaff, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you this morning.